good evening, and welcome to another workshop from Pivot, where we are going to discuss today a very interesting topic about how to utilize the last few weeks that are left in 2024 to prepare for success in 25. And we have two really amazing speakers with us today, which both of them are leaders, coaches, and have helped a lot of folks in their career journeys accomplish very ambitious goals. Richa, Mahendra, and Shyam Sadasivan, they're both here with us just behind the stage. I will be bringing them on to the stage in just a couple of seconds. So hold on and allow me a second. There we go. All right. Hi, Shyam. Hi, Richa. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Hi, thank you for having us, Arjun. Doing great.
Great, great. Thank you so much for making time for this. Post Diwali, I think there's still a little bit of Diwali hangover for people going on. I hope you both had a nice festive season. But now, what I've been seeing suddenly after Diwali, people have this itch to make sure that they are well prepared for the next year.
Mhm.
And a lot of folks that we work with at Pivot, they have been asking, okay, the year's coming to an end, and I have all these very ambitious goals that I've planned for the next year. I want your help. I want to make sure I achieve them. So hence this session today. And again, appreciate you being here. Just to kick things off, I think it would help. We can do a quick round of intros. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. I'll just go first. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Arjun, and I am the founder of Pivot. The link for our website is in my signature here, in case you're interested. So, at Pivot, what we do is help people make smooth and successful career transitions. What that means is, if at any point in time you're thinking about changing not just your domain or your industry, but also, let's say, your job, your company, your level in the organization, these are all the different inflection points that we help people with. We'll talk more about what we do and how it all happens. It's not a lot of magic. It's very scientific and rigorous approach, which we'll talk about. But that's a bit about me, and I would love to turn it over to Richa first. Richa, welcome again. Thank you so much for being here. If you could just share a little bit about your career journey so far and what you do today, that would be great.
Thank you, Arjun, and I'm delighted to be here today. Currently, I am the co-founder and a co-creator Abundance with an organization called Finesse, which I started in 2013. Prior to that, I had 18 years of work experience, and the last of them was as hub HR head in a large telecom company. But just to share, I am able to run a consulting firm because I have had a very checkered career where I have headed a business, I've done sales, I've done HR, and which is why today we are into business consulting, OD interventions, training, coaching. So that's about me. And over to
Great.
Shyam.
All right. Yes. Sham, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Again, great to be here to address the after Diwali energy about careers. Fantastic topic you've chosen for today as well. So I am a coach. I'm an executive coach and educator. I spend most of my time doing kind of team interventions around organizational developmental goals. Or I spend time with groups and individuals for their individual career growth. So the topic you've chosen for today is very close to my heart. I've just been doing this for about 5 years on my own, and I consult and partner with multiple organizations globally on their developmental initiatives. Before that, I spent about 20 years in tech, starting in the US and then in the UK, and I'm now based out of Bangalore and a bit out of UK as well. So one of my favorite topics for sure, and I know I have a ton of ideas in my head. Most of my time I'm trying to kind of prioritize to what you are going to kind of direct this conversation to, Arjun. So looking forward to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both. I see a lot of experience here that we want to unpack with regard to, helping others unlock their full potential. One of the things that is a recurring theme, at least in my experience, when it comes to helping people in their career, is, a lot of folks are planning their careers very actively now, as
Mhm.
opposed to just letting things happen by default. you
Mhm.
know um, so earlier, where we used to see people got support from was their organization primarily, to say that your organization is responsible for your career success, for your career growth, and achieving certain milestones. Over the last 5 6 years, especially since COVID and mass layoffs, mass resignations that have been happening, we at least have been noticing that people are taking more and more control of their careers. They don't want to depend just on their organization. And so with that in mind, people are starting to have this new uh, way of thinking about career planning, which is not something they had before, right? So the first thing that I want to talk about, and this is something that will be a multi-part conversation. I don't think it's a unidimensional thing.
Sure. Mm.
Is how do we, as these new evolved species of professionals, how do we take into account the different things that happen to us during a year, right? There are a lot of wins, there are a lot of challenges. We celebrate our wins. Sometimes, they get swept up under the carpet. We forget about them. But we definitely don't forget our challenges, because our managers and our teams make sure that we remember, you
Remember
know,
that.
whatever didn't work out. So how do we do this in a balanced way towards the end of the year, where we take into account all of the important things that happened and use that information to direct our career forward, in the next year? How do we sort of basically reflect on 2024 with challenges and areas for growth? So I'll start with Richa, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. So, what you're talking about is, reflection. And that's a very high leverage habit. And I want to share a couple of statistics here. So, there was this survey by Harvard Business Review, and they said that employees who spend just 15 minutes at the end of the day, reflecting on the lessons they performed, after 10 days, they start performing at a 23% higher rate. So, like you rightly said, reflecting on the positives and the negatives. The other thing is, because the theme of this entire webinar is around the goals for next year. So, another quick statistics that I want to share is that, we make lofty goals, we make promises to ourselves and resolutions, but only 8% of them are carried through. And there are simply three reasons for that: because we don't have clear goals, we don't plan, and we do not learn from the past obstacles. Right? So I feel, in the interest of time, so one, we should celebrate and remember our key achievements. We should identify our strength patterns or strength profile, as they say. And at the same time, we should identify and try and notice the pattern, that where are the places where we were challenged. And then deep dive, look at it, whether it was a knowledge issue, skill issue, attitude issue. Try and, learn a lot from the feedback that we got, and then set developmental goals and prioritize those goals. This is how I think, in a nutshell, it would be to remember what happened, bucket it, and use it for the next year.
Sure, sure. I think very valid points, especially with regard to kind of taking into stock actively what has happened to you during the year, and definitely make sure to celebrate the wins, because I think working on your gaps is almost as important as recognizing your strengths and building upon them. Right? If you don't have awareness around what you're good at, you get mired into this sort of a circular equation of just continuing to work on your gap areas, where sometimes it's okay to say, I'm not good at something, let me just remove that from my work portfolio and focus on the things that I'm actually good at. So I think very valid points, Richa. Sham, would love your take on this as well.
Absolutely. Great points being made. I'm trying to see how I can build on those. As soon as you speak of plans, the first quote that comes to my mind is that old one, that plans are nothing, but planning is everything. It's a World War quote, so it has war connotations to it, but it's very, very valid for any kind of plan that you're making. In a way,
Hmm.
it's a real dichotomy. It's a real dilemma. I'm making a plan for something I can't predict. So it's not like you can just walk through 3 steps and be done with 2025, because you don't know what's going to come. Just like how COVID hit us. So the the muscle, I like to kind of work on myself as well, and work with my clients as well, is the idea of anti-fragility, which is Nicholas Taleb's idea on, can the opposite of fragile is not rigid, it's not strong, it's something, if you break it's fragile, if you hit it, it breaks, it's fragile. But the idea that, can something become stronger because you break it, that is anti-fragility. And the idea that you can't really predict, you can only plan, but then you can only plan with the knowledge that most of your plan is going to be obsolete the moment you write it down. So because something is going to change, some variable is going to change. So the anti-fragility idea is about, if you're looking to 2025, my recommendation would be to intentionally think about how you can become stronger whatever happens. So for example, Taleb talks about the example of airlines. If there's a flight crash, or a flight, god forbid, something happens, then actually the next plane is actually better because of it. So if there's a disaster, if there's a difficulty, if there's a crisis, the next time a plane is built, it's actually much, much better because of that crisis. So thinking about what crises, in building on the reflective recommendation from Richa, if you're thinking about 2024, think about what were the most difficult challenges you went through, and think about the next time it happens, what are you going to do differently, and how are you becoming stronger as a result of it. So to take another pop reference, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Absolutely. I think brilliant points there. And one thing, Shyam, I think both of you might be aware. I mean, you both are career coaches, and you've also helped large workforce with training and career advancement. A lot of the practices that are there in the corporate today actually have a derivation from wars and military structures that were instituted during the First and the Second World War.
True.
Like the corporate structure as we know it today was actually invented in the 50s, right after World War II. And yeah, exactly. And so I think a lot of the things that we should be doing may not be as rigid as what the military does, but I think we should look at that as at least a reference point. And if you look at, I mean, what the army or what the military does, I mean, they plan things to a T, right? There is no scope for ambiguity in what would happen in all kind of fringe scenarios, right? I don't think we need that level of planning for careers probably, but we are on the other side of the extreme, right? Like people not planning their careers. At least I know, like people in my previous organizations and I myself never really planned what was going to happen to me in the next year, apart from some minor reflection at the end of the year, because our managers were like, hey, give me a one pager on what you did, I need to show my manager.
Sure.
So apart from that, so I think, yeah, very relevant points. I also, Shyam, as you were talking about this, I got reminded of another quote which is one of my favorites from Charles Darwin, and it's all about adaptability, right? It's basically goes something like, it's not the smartest of species or the strongest of species that survive, it's the one most adaptable to change, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
I think this concept of anti-fragility, even though I think it has different connotations, not exactly the same, but I think it has parallels to this part, right? where
Sure.
where
Yeah.
you need to be ready for anything in today's kind of, hate this acronym, but the VUCA environment, as they say, right?
Sure.
So yeah, no, I think a lot of definitely a lot of good points there. Now, just building up on top of this, right? The most important thing that we reflect upon, whether it's our pros or kind of areas of improvement, is a skill set primarily, right? I mean, yes, you could think about your achievements, yes, you could think about your overall exposure and experiences, but end of the day, you're kind of stacking yourself up on understanding, what am I good at, what am I not good at, and what do I need to become better at, right? So basically, skilling up for success,
Yeah.
right? Now, Richa, I would love to understand from you. There's so much talk that's happening, especially since AI has come along,
Yeah.
become very pervasive into each and every industry and almost every domain today, to the point that whether I'm an artist or I'm a hardcore, let's say professional like an auditor, right? Doesn't matter. AI is going to play an important role in our
Yeah.
lives. right? And apart from AI, I mean, AI is not the be all and end all. There are many other things that people need to skill up for, right? Whether it's technical skills or it's soft skills. So how do we, in a structured way, take into account all the different emerging skill sets that are relevant for us and understand what do we need to work on for highest ROI and success in our career?
So yeah, Arjun, like you said, the dot has shifted a little bit, and the environment is changing very fast. Even VUCA, as you mentioned, is Bani now. So what is happening is that things are changing very, very rapidly. And if you talk about skills, the shelf life of a skill is only 5 years now, or even less. And AI, machine learning, all these things are changing very fast. So by 2030, 40% of the jobs as we know them would have changed. And
Wow.
by 2030, again, 65% of the skills required for jobs will change globally. So to quote a small example, let's say when EV came, you know those skill sets were not available. So all of a sudden there was this whole thing of new skills that are required. So yes, you are right. One will have to be very, very agile, and so just as it is predicted that AI is going to wipe off 85 million jobs, it is also there that it is going to create 97 million jobs. Of course, there are different estimates from different people. Some people also say it might not be true, but this is what I picked up from World Economic Forum. So what is going to happen is that people will have to think about a fair balance of technical and soft skills. Learning agility is going to become very important. Like you said, that up to a few years earlier, people used to depend on the organized learning that their organization provided to them, but now people are looking out. So future, so you'll have digital literacy is going to become very important. Then analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, and creative thinking on the side of behavioral competencies. So data and AI on hard skills, and these are the other skills, because as the jobs change, people will be required to solve more complex problems. Because if AI is going to be used to solve this thing. And so this is where I feel that you'll have to have a good mix of both these. So, a very interesting trend that jobs in generative AI are now being paid at 47% higher than in coding. Things are changing very fast. So now people will have to be on their toes and keep looking out, predicting that this is happening, peer into the future and see where they are going to make a mark for themselves.
Those are some crazy stats, Richa. Thanks for sharing that. I think, the more I think about those stats, the more I feel that, um, things will happen so quickly, but they're also happening so subtly that, not a lot of people will be ready to evolve that fast and adapt to this change that's happening, right? Because I mean, the numbers were staggering that you're talking about, right? Almost 100 million new jobs and 85 million being eradicated by, I think, the next 6 years. That's a staggering number. Sham, so similar question, but slightly different angle for you, right?
Yeah.
Things are looking, I don't want to say bleak because it's not necessarily bleak. Richa pointed out there are a lot of new jobs coming up as well. But do you think we are actually prepared to handle this level of change as an individual professional? All the skills that Richa is talking about, I mean, they're all critical, right? But do we have the time and mind space to actually, take them up alongside the day-to-day tasks that we are assigned in our job? That's my question.
Okay. So do we have time to adapt? Okay. So there is a underlying kind of basis and foundation to that question, that things are changing very fast. Lots of things are coming, and we need to be able to stay agile and pick things up as we go along and do our day jobs at the same time. Have I understood the question correctly? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got you. I'm going to take you by 25 years. No, slightly more than that, maybe 28 years. Clearly showing you my age. I was in school trying to decide what to do in college, and my parents were staying in a smaller town in south of India, and our neighbor walked in, and I was doing my school, finishing my schooling in Chennai, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I think computer science." I had no idea why I said that, but everybody seemed to be going to computer engineering. And he said, "But doesn't that keep changing all the time? Why don't you get a job in a bank or something? You'll be steady. You'll have a steady job like your father." My dad worked in a bank for 30 plus years, but he did different things. But then he stayed in one place, one organization for 3 decades, right? And his point was, but you'll have to keep learn. You have to keep changing. The programs keep changing. Everything keeps changing. You'll have to, and I guess that has not changed. That particular aspect of what is a career, what is a job, right? I think a lot of people are moving towards jobs which are um, rewarding specific micro skills. You do one thing really well, great, you have a job.
Yeah.
And I think there's a shift already towards shorter gig based jobs than careers, where career necessarily means that you have moved into one space for a long time, during which you'll do various other things, but you have committed yourself to be a banker, a financier, and computer scientist, and so on. So the idea of having a single career path with various things in between, I think that's changing to maybe portfolio careers where people are doing 2 3 things at the same time, like myself. And also the shift from that whole old kind of space of learn, earn, retire. So learn for what, 10 years, 15 years in school plus college or whatever, and then earn for 30 years and then retire and you're done. Put your feet up, read the paper, and so on. But I think now that, and to Richa's point, that timeline is becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. I would say maybe even 5 to 7 years max, where you learn something, you earn from it, and then you don't retire. You just change and learn something else and earn from that, and then change again. And you may go through 7 8 10 cycles of this
Yeah.
in your career. So instead of, I mean, I think it's kind of the same, but in a slightly different manner. So, do we have the bandwidth? I think we have no choice, because I don't think we have the luxury of sitting in one place and saying, I'm kind of set for life in that sense. The only place where you hear that a lot is maybe Japan, where there's been things have been slow, and even they are changing. They are no longer a zero inflation economy. They've realized that you have to kind of move with the times. So my short answer after that long one is, do we need to make time to adapt? I think adapting and staying resilient is the name of the game, and not necessarily new for 2025. I think it's been around for some time. But one last thing on this, Arjun. So with the advent of AI, what has changed? There's this beautiful little snip on YouTube. Please, people should find it, by the NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, talking to that amazing technology expert of our time, Akshay Kumar, at an interview, where Akshay Kumar says, "What is changing? What should we be worried about? What will AI do that I can't do?" And Jensen's answer is a masterclass. He says, "AI cannot do everything we do. AI can do 20 to 30% of what we do 1,000 times better. So we need to know that 20 30% is going to go, but then we need to be really really good at that other 70 80%, and you need to take a call."
Shyam, I just want to add something to your point. Uh, the point is that how responsibly we are going to develop AI will determine a lot of things. If we allow AI to serve us, it's good. But recently I read that Polishram hired a humanoid as a CEO. This was around four,
Wow.
5, 6 months back.
Wow.
Now, that is where it begins to become a little scary. I'm sorry it's off the topic, Arjun, but I just wanted to add on to our ability to use it responsibly, and then everything works.
Sure.
So
I agree. And again, as a coach, I'd bring it back to what I'm in control of and what I can actually do.
yeah,
I can't control where AI is going. I can only control my decision or what I want to do with it. And if it goes in those directions, I'll probably choose not to go into that, or work with someone who's deciding to do that. It is scary for sure. It's worrying. It's scary. But for example, I use AI for note taking, for summarizing my session.
yeah.
I do a bunch of Fireflies is one of my favorites. So we have to take a call intelligently as to what aspect of our work we want to give to AI. Like, I would not
Yeah.
trust an AI coach at the moment, at least. I don't know.
It started though.
It has started. I
It
know.
started.
I know Marshall
Arjun,
Goldsmith's entire AI chatbot. Yeah.
Arjun, in terms of change, like Shyam said, people don't have a choice. So we were doing an intervention for a large PSU bank, and one of the things we noticed there was that their entire population of customers was on the wrong side of 45. We deep dived and we realized, because in PSU banks, typically, growth is tenure based, not so much merit based. Now, of course, things have changed. So these people had never adopted technology. I mean, you're doing an assessment center, a virtual assessment center. They would have two assistants who would come up and help them with the computer. So we gave those findings. And the agility with which, because the MD at that point was, a very vibrant and a progressive transformational person, they worked with such agility that after 6 months they had the highest Q1 results. So, just to add on to Shyam's point, it will have to be change to survive. We'll have to, and people will do it.
Yep. Absolutely. I think very well said. And thanks for sharing that example, Richa. I think that's definitely one aspect of skilling up and kind of evolving that I've always thought about. Because even at Pivot, we have when we first started in 2021, the expectation was that we'll get people primarily in their late 20s to mid 30s. Okay, that was our hypothesis. Basically, people who wanted support to achieve their career goals. And slowly but surely, we started getting a lot of clientele with more than 15 years experience, up to 25 years experience, right? And these folks, I mean, I'm sure some of them perhaps are working with you as well on their goals. But what we realized is that they are the ones which are most at risk because of the technological advancement that's happening, especially for people who don't have a tech background. So a lot of them, for example, we worked with plenty of IT project managers, folks working in like the Infosys and TCS and those kind of, and have spent a lifetime of their career, like 15, 20 years. So they are very set in their ways of how things happen. But suddenly they know that there is this big change around them. And this time it looks real. It's not just talk, it's all real. It's happening right now. And suddenly, even if they were comfortable for 15, 20 years doing whatever they were doing, they are thinking about, okay, I can't continue with the status quo. Something needs to change. I'm making good money. I have a stable career. I've been at my company for 3, 4, 5 years, but I still know that I can't continue just in the same path that I have been in, which is a very different mindset compared to how people used to think about their careers, maybe like 5, 10 years ago, even. So this is, something that, when you're talking about folks over 45, I felt like this is something that is a
Yep.
recurring theme from our perspective.
Yeah.
Now, one thing before I move on to the next topic, which will deal with more about how to nurture that confidence and resilience to build these skill set, because you're going to, get rejections and failures a lot more than you used to before. We'll talk about that. But one thing that I would love to get your take on, what are maybe top 4 or 5 skills. Sham, you talked about that video, right? The Akshay Kumar video with Jensen Wong. What are some of the things that as humans you feel will be timeless in the workforce, right? And that's something that will not ever be substituted by AI or most other technologies, at least in the foreseeable future. Would love, Richa or Sham, either of your take on that. Whoever's ready, please go ahead.
Shyam, you want to go?
I could give it a shot. I'm not sure I'll do 4 or 5 on the first shot. Maybe I'll come back with a couple. A couple of things that are coming up very strongly for me is, of course, change. Just change management. I mean, we still, I don't know, a huge proportion of change initiatives still fail. Even though we have models like around for 100 years, there's too many factors. So I think we need to continue to be really, really good at change. I think influence, in the age of misinformation and over-stimulated brains, just influencing people and getting decisions out of them. I think that's, and I'm speaking only soft skills, by the way, what we call soft skills, or what I like to call human skills, not the more technology aspects of things. Change, influence, maybe conflict, because I think the world is getting significantly polarized. So not just kind of in terms of politics and elections, but also in terms of ideas. And I think the best leaders are the ones who are managing to navigate the gray areas,
Yeah.
and not necessarily go left or right or black or white. So change, influence, conflict, some things that come up for me immediately. I'll pass it to you, Richa, and maybe come back. in a bit.
Yeah, so I feel one of the most important things would be emotional intelligence, and start which embodies everything from self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills, and the other important thing that I feel cannot be replicated is growth mindset. I mean, at least today, I think like that, the way we are foreseeing. So, just adding on to the two things that you said, and strong communication skills.
Yeah,
An AI written note can be seen from a mile off. So,
yeah, yeah.
elevate this, I mean, those words and those rockets and
I'm one of my favorite things to do. Not too much, but whenever I feel like it is to copy a LinkedIn post and put it through an AI checker and see like a 74% or something like that, and say, "Ooh, almost this
now
entire
children
thing
are
is."
doing it.
I know.
Children are doing it in writing their essays for college.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's really scary. Huh? I just came up with one more actually, just as you were saying that, Richa. And for me, I think it is also this sense of we going back to our planning and control topic. I think moving forward, timeless is going to be that being able to manage that lack of control and having that sense of humility that I don't know. I've always felt like, a leader who says I don't know is a very, very powerful leader,
Yeah.
because they themselves can accept it and move things forward. So I think for me, 2025, with all this uncertainty with tech, and the uncertainty about AI is even more interesting because we have no idea what will come out on the other side.
Yeah.
We actually have no idea to predict how this thing is going to actually work out. It's not like the old technology. A spreadsheet helps you to make things faster or something. What AI is actually going to give us, and that's why it's scary, to Richard's point earlier. What is it going to give? And I think a sense of humility to be able to kind of accept that you don't know.
Sham, just one more point here. Also, AI today, and like you said, we have to embrace it. But I'm just stating a fact. AI, there are no strong regulations around AI because there is so much of money in AI. Europe was the only place where they started to even talk about it, and the money very, very quickly flew out.
Yeah.
So that's where my fear, the initial fear that I was talking. Of course, we have to embrace it. We should use it, and it is improving productivity. But
True, true. And what a great point, because when you think about any industry where regulations come, when do regulations come? Regulations come when the money becomes very big. And in the words of Naval Ravikant, he talks about this and says, you can go and create wealth anywhere as long as you are not taking it away from anyone.
yeah,
You've got to create fresh wealth. And I think that fresh wealth is coming. But then when it reaches a tipping point, then I think regulations will come. When it's not that big a problem in front of people, then I don't think it. Anyway, I'm completely in agreement with you. I'm just thinking about what timeline is it when these regulations come through. Right now, money is being thrown at the problem. But again, I'm scared only by little parts of AI. I'm largely quite bullish on it.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic points around that. I think the skills that you both shared also, I think very, very relevant. So, recently we did a lot of thinking around exactly this topic, like what are the some of the timeless, irreplaceable skill set, which will become more and more important in coming times. I think you both hit it on the head with, everything that you shared. We came up with this acronym and love to add some of the things that you have shared. So it's a CCECC acronym, right? 5 skills. And which I believe that, no matter how advanced AI gets, we will continue to require humans to be good at these 5 things. So number one is, I think, communication,
Yeah,
which is, I mean, very simple and kind of uh, overrated at times also, but it will be something that becomes more and more important because we are outsourcing communication right now to AI a lot, and it will level the playing field for people who don't have great communication skills, but only up to a certain extent. I think after that, it will actually differentiate the good from the great, where people start to apply their own human judgment and communication skills. The other things are creativity, empathy,
yeah,
collaboration, and critical thinking. Um, these were some of the things that we felt, really, really should be imbibed by most professionals, if not all. to continue to grow in their careers. What I would really like to add, and I think there's some parallels, are the two of the things that both Shyam, you and Richa mentioned. One is the conflict resolution. I think that's a really valid point. I think it's only going to exacerbate. It's not stopping anytime soon, even in the workplace. Like we have seen people with diverse political opinions in getting their relationship impacted, right? Like between a manager and a employee. I mean, that's something that people never thought of before, but now it's actually happening. So forget about the actual conflicts related to work. It's conflicts related to your political standings that's causing workplace conflict, right? And I think the other thing, Richa, you mentioned was emotional intelligence. I think very, very relevant point, because you're going to experience a lot of failures and people not meeting your expectations, right? How do you deal with them in an emotionally mature way is extremely important, and it only will grow from here on. What do you think about some of the skills that I've shared? I mean, I think communication we probably all agree on,
Yes,
creativity and
100%.
collaboration. These two don't get talked about enough, in my view, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Collaboration is something which perhaps can be done with good emotional intelligence, but how do you think good collaboration with employees, with teammates, with managers can happen for better success in future? Richa, we'll start with you.
I'll let Shyam take a shot at it because I
Yeah.
couldn't understand the question very well, actually.
So collaboration, Arjun, you're asking about our thoughts on collaboration as one of the five that you mentioned, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, how do we collaborate better as
How do we collaborate
yeah,
better?
yeah.
Hmm. It used to be easier answer when we didn't have the whole remote hybrid situation post COVID. The collaboration just meant sit in the same room and just spend a lot of time together, and then eventually you start collaborating better because you end up trusting each other. You go through experiences, common, things together, and you start working better with each other if you spend a lot of time physically in the same space. Remote is much much harder, and I think my take on the collaboration piece is in this new world. I'm going back to my time in the UK. So I was in a team of 15. We had a room with 15 desks, 15, 20 desks, and all of us would be in the same room. We could hear everything everyone said, any calls they were doing. We were in sales. So, anything happened, we would immediately know, and then we would use that information and then do better in our next call. And there used to be this lovely kind of almost movement of information and emotions in the room, and we used to do really well together. That element of kind of feeling like you're collaborating in a team of 15 or 20, I think it's very hard in a remote hybrid environment, even if the team meets once a week. I think right now it's like 3-2-2 is what they talk about. 3 times remote, 2 times office, 2 times, of course, break for the weekend. I think in the newer area, the collaboration happens in smaller groups where you have a larger touch point with a few different people. So you may not have a sense of community or collaboration with all 15 people in the team, but maybe four, maybe that you spend a lot of time with remotely, you talk a lot, you send messages, da, 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 and then there's the entire 15 people who come together once in a while. So I think the collaboration has become much tighter in smaller groups, and the sense of community and collaboration in larger groups is much much harder to achieve because of this whole remote environment. I'm sure there are exceptions where hundreds of people feel fantastic and really integrated into one space. I'm sure there are organizations that manage that, but in my experience, I think people are becoming more comfortable in multiple small groups than one large one.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Patanjali rose to huge success, and the fundamental formula was that groups of 13. And the other thing is that we talked about it earlier also, and I'm working with somebody on a parallel this thing, where he said a lot of things that we do in corporate are borrowed from military, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that we fundamentally have not borrowed, and which we should be, this so I'm not saying that you should not have competition or goal setting or something, but what needs to now be done is some sort of collaborative team rewards, rather than identifying the those 2 or 3 or 4 5% stars in the organization. That's where I feel we will have to move to,
Sure.
because
So
we've
I
borrowed a lot from military, but not this fundamental where the army credo is first my nation, next my squad, and third is me. So that is what.
So true, so true. So yeah, I spent a lifetime of career in compensation and rewards consulting before I started Pivot. I don't know if you both know that. One of the strongest tenets of compensation was, Richa, similar to what you were just talking about, that you have to drive both competition as well as solidarity at the
Yeah.
same time. Because competition drives out achievements. People like to overachieve from each other, right? And it's just very natural to humans to kind
Yep.
of do better than other people. But at the same time, you want solidarity, because if everybody is working towards their own individual goal, you can't achieve that larger vision that the organization has. So I think similar to what you were talking about for military, I think most organizations actually utilize this concept and rewards, where you don't just set both organization and team goals, but you also give, let's say, salary which reflects your own performance and responsibilities, but at the same time you have bonuses and you have equity in the company which ties to the larger vision of that company. So I
Yep.
think that balance between the two is very, very critical, where you want to drive individual performance while also retaining a strong semblance of solidarity amongst people
Yep.
within the organization. I think that's really important. Now, talking about the next topic here, I think this one is really something which, again, is gaining a lot of importance. People are just experiencing more failures. Let me just come out and say that, right? Like, people are experiencing more failures than they used to, perhaps because we are trying more than we used to. Right? Earlier, nobody was trying for portfolio careers, as Shyam, you were talking about, right? At
Yep.
least very few people. It's
Yep.
gaining much more importance. It's everywhere on social media, right? More and more people are thinking very actively about it. The other thing is the whole Gen Z generation and that debate around the new generation about how at least the boomers and the Gen X think like they are weaker in some ways. And I don't want to mince my words, because it's really out there on internet. If you look at the EY incident that happened, with the employee passing away and the kind of response that the company had, it was out there for everybody to see. The
Mhm.
response was basically something around that, you know what, it wasn't anything different than we do at this company. She was, the person was not capable enough of handling that pressure. That was the tone that was used, right? Now, I'm not going to get into that specific incident, but that's a larger debate that's happening, where a lot of people are saying that apparently the younger generations don't have it in them to face setback and difficult situations as much as the prior generations. Let's forget about the generational debate, but the essence is, how do we make sure that we, regardless of generation, continue to have strong mindsets and resilient, growth oriented mindsets to tackle anything that comes our way in our careers, which are going to experience more volatility in the future. Sham, we'll start with you on this one.
Sure. First, I'd like to, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of a parenting mindset over here, because I was talking to my children about failure and things like that. My children are 15 and 10. And we were talking about what the difference is between a mistake and a failure. Because I think a lot of us are falling into the trap of calling a mistake a failure. A failure has a very definitive finality to it, like it's done, dusted, it's finished. And I think what we are making are a lot of mistakes. And just that simple reframe can help. So I made a mistake, I'm going to learn from it and try again. It's much harder to get out of a failure. So I'll just off the bat kind of try and reframe it to a mistake. And why are mistakes happening? But why do we feel like mistakes are failures? I think there's a couple of things there. One is, I think we are completely overstimulated by social media. So I'm cutting myself off significantly from it. Very, 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 very infrequent. Because all we see is only the best side of everybody. So there's a lot behind that. So there's about limiting exposure to that kind of constant stream of success, which automatically makes you feel like a failure. So that's one. And the second is, I think, the loneliness epidemic as well. And by loneliness, I don't mean being alone in a room. I mean kind of genuinely not feeling, like you said, the connection with people. like a true connect, like throw away your phone and your computer and just sit down and talk for half an hour. Just that personal, how many friends do you really have? So going back to the parenting aspect, helping kids kind of spend more time with children doing nothing, or piece of paper and mud, playing with that rather than tech. So I think the coming back to the failure, what needs to be done is, I think, finding resilience is about getting really comfortable with who you are, irrespective of what the world is throwing at you, what social media is saying to you, not feeling completely overburdened by it. And also, in the loneliness, on the loneliness topic, just finding a bit of a support network. You are not alone. You shouldn't consider yourself alone, especially after a mistake slash failure. We feel like we're starting from zero, but that doesn't mean you are zero. I keep saying that again and again. You are not zero. You're starting from zero again, and that's quite all right. So a large part of my work, for example, is just being there with somebody, saying you can call me anytime and just have a quick chat, because I think we are really missing that. And by the way, this doesn't have to be a paid coach. It could be a friend. It could be one of the things I keep asking everybody is, and this is an anti-fragile question. Tomorrow you get a call and you've been let go. Yeah. Who are you going to call? Right? Who are you going to call just to have a chat? Do you know? Who is that going to be? And do you have a list of people that are really there for you, are going to champion your cause? I think that will help us to bounce back.
Very, very, important points there. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Richa, please go ahead. I think you
So,
were going
so
to add.
Arjun, if you remember, 3-4 years back, there was this front page news of Vedanta, where, Adani Group, where one of the employees had made a mistake, which led to a lot of loss. And then he was worried he's going to be sacked, and he said, "No, you have learned something. I won't let you go away with that learning." So that's the but now
That's
there is a very
anti-fragile.
big generational thing, and when you were talking about your kids, there was one thing that I was reading where in McKinsey it said that for work is central to Generation Z only to a level of 49%.
Hmm.
So do they really want to bounce back is one question. And yeah, Shyam, really, do they want to bounce back?
Good point.
And then I think of, you were talking about Japan. I mean, Japan is so inspiring after that immense devastation that happened in World War II.
Exactly.
But they became a global economic powerhouse.
Yes.
Or if you look at any of these disasters, how after that there is more resilience, people come together. Or if you talk about, when there are these economic, the depression was there. Again, we've said that the new economy that came was more innovative, more resilient, and more adaptive. So
Hmm.
one is that do they, there are multiple examples where you bounce back stronger uh, after you are put down. And yes, one of the things that is there is that people are leading such virtual lives,
Correct.
that they don't have that sounding board, they don't have, and they don't understand where the difference is. But anyways, having said that, I always recommend to people that I work with that always have a gratitude and achievement diary. So gratitude for what you have and achievement for what you have achieved, because that's very,
Hmm.
very important. Even as you're being bogged down by failure, then self-care, you have to, it's about the mindset, being very strong in your mind, and not being, also being, like you said, being able to influence. But for being resilient and being bounce back, you also need to have a mind of your own.
Yeah.
So I would probably not, at some parts, not get influenced.
Yeah.
Like you said, people on the social media are always, they're having the best time in their lives, they are successful, they are achieving, but not getting influenced by that.
Agree.
Breaking down your challenges, seeking
Agree.
advice, having that very close knit of and most importantly, staying connected with what your larger goal in life is.
Yes.
When you go back and you ask people, and I have, just like you, I have done this with people, starting with 25 to right up to 45 and 50, and I tell them that you are about to have a plane crash, and you just have to write down one note. This is who I wanted to be, or this is how I wanted to show up, and this is how I showed up. And most of them don't know where they want to go and what they want to be. So
Yeah.
knowing that and then taking baby steps towards it, I mean, kind of makes you.
Yes. Yeah.
And I always, yeah, and especially when I'm going for, let's say, pitching or something, especially when I started Finesse. So initially I used to always say, if they don't hire me, their loss. So, so many ways of working on your mind. And
Agreed.
sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, no. I mean, when thoughts flow, more newer thoughts come up. Building on that, something I wanted to add to that is that you said, "Do they want to bounce back?" And that's such an interesting question, because if you look at the careers, I mean, how we have moved through the ages, the industrial revolution, where job security was everything. People wanted basically a paycheck and security that I'll have a job for the next 30, 40 years or whatever. Then the information IT technology revolution, where it was more about maybe a little more than just job security, a little satisfaction, little
Yeah.
interest, little, inspiration, happiness from the job. And then now, of course, it's social revolution. So it's about, do I look cool because I go to this company? I mean, certain companies have clearly lost their sheen, right, over the last few years, and certain companies are looking cooler. But then the very, very important thing is to ensure that there's a balance. To your point about balance earlier, Arjun, that it should not just be about just the style and the sheen and the social and the Insta worthy job, but also something that you are interested in. It adds value to you. Over 10 years, you'll end up becoming a better person. I actually honestly feel that what you do shapes who you become. So
Yeah.
be very careful what careers you pick, because you'll spend a lot of time at it, and that will shape your personality, your life in ways that you can't possibly foresee.
Yeah. All very important points. I think the one that I would like to reinforce to people is like having that support system in place. I cannot emphasize the importance of it more. Um, and like you said, it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be a paid coach or a, like a, let's say, specifically industry mentor, which is something that we do at Pivot. I think it could be a group of friends. But generally, one thing that I've seen is, your family can be great support, but when it comes to career, try to see if you can have somebody outside your family as well, because a lot of times we end up taking, whatever our family, especially the coordinate family, says for granted. Especially in times of difficulty from a professional standpoint, I've seen that especially Gen Z and the millennials today, they're not taking advice from family as much as people used to in prior years. So today you
Hmm.
can't just depend on family. You have to, either find colleagues, friends, or professional coaches and mentors. And I think the value that they can add to your career is multifold than what you would imagine. So yeah, I completely echo that thought. Um, Before we wrap up, one thing that is very core to what Pivot does is helping people land new jobs and make career transitions. So I definitely want to speak about that before we let you go.
Mhm.
I think the job market has been one of the most challenging ones over the last 2 to 3 years since the Russia-Ukraine war started and inflation reached its peak, and companies started tightening their purses for cost savings, etc. Right? Then AI happened, kind of really a double whammy, where companies started to say that we need to invest more in AI talent and technology and kind of do away with some of the other things. Where now large tech has laid off, I think, close to 400,000, 500,000 people, which are reported. I'm sure there are many unreported stats as well on this front, right? Globally, about 500,000 people have been laid off. So we see people dealing with a lot of job market uncertainty. And some of it is, people who are involuntarily in the market because they have been laid off. Some of them are very actively looking, even though they have a stable career because of all the changes on the horizon. I don't know how much you both, kind of help people with job search or, those kind of things. But still, as coaches and people who help others in their careers, what are some of the things that people should keep in mind um, as they are navigating difficult job market like this? I mean, apart from the resilience and the mindsets that
Yeah.
we have talked about, is there anything tangible which you have seen either? I mean, there are primarily two goals when people are navigating difficult job markets. One is, how do you land that role that you are aiming for, right? And the second is, how do you land it in as less stressful manner and shorter time frame as possible, right? So one is the end goal and the other is the process of achieving that goal, which is the time frame and the stress levels. Anything that you have seen that could help people achieve these two things better? Um, Sham, can we start off with you?
Sure. I don't do much work with kind of placing folks and things,
Sure.
but I do have an opinion having worked with people who have navigated this. And I'll split this answer into two pieces. One is people who are earlier on in their careers, and one is for people who are later on in their careers. Maybe 20s, early 30s, and then late 30s, 40s, that kind of thing, or maybe even 50s. And the interesting kind of contrast I see is that one group has something and doesn't have something, and the other group is exactly the opposite. And I'll explain this. So earlier on, it's this lot of style and online footprint and digital positioning and all of that, but then the skills are lacking. Still, even today, hiring out of universities is very, very hard, or hiring even people with 3 4 years experience is very, very hard. So if you're earlier on in your career, please don't just focus on how you come across and how you look online, and what your profile is like, because the first thing you're going to put in your profile, I am going to ask you, and you better have a really, really strong, powerful, substantial answer to that. Focus on building skills early on. The other stuff is fluff. So that's the one I'd like to tell them. And exactly opposite to people who have, I don't know, 10 to 20 plus years experience. You have a lot of experience, but are you talking about it? Are you putting, I'm not asking you to become a Instagram influencer, but do you have a good LinkedIn profile? Do you have a way of introducing yourself? Can you speak about your top 3 achievements over the last decade? One of the first things my own mentor does anytime I do a piece of work is, first time, said, "Hi Shyam, okay, what did you do well?" And I used to struggle with the answer to that, because you always go straight to what you didn't do well, right? So knowing what your strength, knowing what you have done well, and then being able to present it, I think is my recommendation for the folks later on in their careers.
Very valid points. Richa?
Yeah, so I'll go a step back before this. What I'm seeing a lot, Arjun, now is that you have, as you would have seen the statistics also, that people, more and more percentage of people are disengaged in their jobs. And especially the younger generation, because they are picking up jobs for probably looking nice, like you had said. They are not validating whether it is resonating with their values, whether it is important to them. So first of all, they need to evaluate it basis whether it is resonating with their values. The second thing is, a very strong trend that's come up is that organizations are now doing skill based hiring. And 58% are doing very specific role skill based hiring. So in addition to whatever your educational qualification is, you have to continuously upskilling yourself. Your personal development there becomes very important.
Hmm.
And without repeating, people are doing a social audit now. We do that also.
Very nice.
And yeah, and building your behavioral competencies, that's going to become very, very important, because even if the skills that we talked about that are going to become important, those are all behavioral competencies.
Yep.
So working on them, consciously practicing them, becomes very important. Network, and most importantly, don't be a clone of everybody else. Have that one USP. Be sure of who you are and how you are showing up. And then that links back to your value system and what's important. And then you're authentic. In an interview, you come across as authentic and hireable.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, fantastic. I'm really glad that we are recording this, because I feel like a lot of people can benefit from these fundamental, timeless tenets that would apply to anybody kind of navigating a difficult job market at any point in time. I especially like the last point, Richard, that you made around not being a clone, because I say this often, there are maybe tens of thousands, maybe millions of people working in the field that an individual professional works in. Let's say I'm a engineer. Now there are millions in India, right? There are 15 million that are graduating every year, approximately. Now, on paper, we could all look very similar, but
Yep.
we still differ,
Yep.
and we can only do that if we take the time to reflect on our strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yep.
You can't just come up with it just by putting in the same kind of daily
Yep.
grunt work day in day out. You have to take time out, and that was the whole purpose of this session, right? To add that extra layer of dimension of kind of planning and knowing that it takes deliberation and intention to craft success in the foreseeable future. It's not going to always happen on its own, right? So I think brilliant topics and pointers that were shared. I have one last question that was actually shared by one of the audience members. I don't know if you both saw that. It's a meta question for you, actually, at a sort of a meta level, since you both are coaches. It's from Rochak, and I'll show it here. The question is, what specific skills do you think coaches will need to cultivate by 2030 to effectively support their clients and stay ahead in their industry? Um, that's a, I think it's a great question because I'm sure you both are already on top of this, right? I'm sure you're kind of telling this to other clients and folks, but I'm sure you're applying it to yourself. So, what can be helpful to coaches in upskilling themselves?
Go for it.
You want to take a shot, Shyam?
Sure. I'm not going to talk about the core skills of a coach of things like empathy and connecting with clients, but I actually think in some way it is tech and AI, because I'll tell you very honestly, my biggest challenge in doing large coaching assignments is actually not the coaching. It's the scheduling, it's the ensuring people are there, they're prepared, they've come with some good questions. It's basically a lot of that background what happens, and it's hard. It's really hard to get I'm coaching 20 people in one organization at the moment, and the actually bringing it all together is very difficult. So I think if AI, tech, other things can kind of help me in this is a very personal answer, to bring that entire picture together. It's absolutely game changing for me. So of course we need to become better coaches, being able to do great in the human side. But I actually think from my perspective, this is a fantastic space for AI to help us bring large pieces of coaching work together.
So for me, there are two parts to this answer. The first part is, and this will have to be developed in coaches, again, a behavioral competency more than a skill, where the coach is 1% more invested in the client's success than the client himself or herself is. That's one part of it. The other part of it is, so I am a PCC coach from ICF, and one thing I see is that, ethicality is something which is very important. So as a coach, you are holding a very sacred space for your client. But multiple times I see that coaches violate this because the organization and the contract writes you have to share what happened with the coach. So the ability to develop that muscle, that you are going to be ethical to the coaching practice and not to making money, is very important. And then of course all the other competencies like holding the space, ensuring that you are able to evoke awareness, and there is client growth, there is action, all of that. So that comes in that 1%. And the second is the code of ethics. Be ethical. And and that's when coaching will become truly transformational, because I grapple with this, Arjun, many times. So they'll say that no, the previous coach used to give us give us an outline of the progress of the coaching, without realizing that it's not for the coach to do it, because I'm violating every code of conduct by talking about my coaching to the organization. So these two from my side.
All right, great. I hope that was helpful, Rochak, and thanks for asking that question. I think with that, we are ready to wrap this up. I can't believe we shared we covered all these wealth of insights that you both brought to the table. Honestly, I genuinely mean it. Like when I was thinking about this topic, I wasn't sure what exactly we were going to cover, but I think the things that we have talked about, from the trends we are seeing in the market to kind of the mindsets that we need to develop, and how you have been helping not just your clients but your children, and how you are preparing better for the future. I think we covered a lot of ground, so thank you so much for bringing such nuggets of wisdom today. We have recorded this. It will be available to folks who couldn't join, and please do share it with whoever you think it could be helpful for. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of the evening. Thanks, Richa and Shyam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.